We need to talk about Final Fantasy XVI. Yes, it's divisive as hell. Yes, there are huge changes to combat, presentation, boss battles, etc. But one thing no one's talking about is the underlying metatextual meaning behind how the game is laid out. Something I think truly elevates it to 5-star territory. I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com, and this is why Final Fantasy XVI is genius. Before we go any further, I'm dealing in full game spoilers. There is a lot to break down. To frame this, we need to talk about what Final Fantasy XVI is, what producer Naoki Yoshida, writer/director Kazutoyo Maehiro, and co-director Hiroshi Takai are getting at, the fundamental dynamics of class, disparity, divide, power, and the value of love between humans on Earth itself. You play as Clive, someone with great standing in the land, who could be as disconnected and hateful towards his lessers as his own mother Annabelle, but is swayed more towards the betterment of his fellow human thanks to the teachings of his father Elwyn, and a want to do right by his brother Joshua, simply because he is the chosen one to become the next Phoenix, and Clive is just a sword-bearing shield of the duchy. All of this takes place in a world divided by the supposed blessings of magic or ether. Bearers are humans born with an attunement to magic, meaning they conjure up minor spells like heating a stove with their fingertips or washing clothes without natural water. For doing so, they're hated, creating a class, racial, or othering divide that works as an easy metaphor for our own world. Something the game does hammer you over the head with, but in a way that's woven into every fabric of Final Fantasy XVI across its entire runtime, forcing you to have the sorts of conversations we're going to have right now. This brings me on to the side quests, and one of the most divisive parts of the game overall. I've seen critics and fans lament these for being too basic in their execution, that all they're doing is delivering food to hungry bearers or gathering materials to build a shelter, clearing out some monsters next to a settlement, or having a conversation to calm someone down. I can only say with my full chest that this is entirely the point. Clive's arc is depicted across 3 major parts of his life, showing him going from a learned scholar and sword fighter through to a slave to the Empire on the front line to a leader of Cid's rebels, taking that name himself to overturn the rule of the world from the bottom up. You are fundamentally supposed to feel weighed down by all of this, to notice the simplicity of just making sure an NPC has a warm meal, next to the arduous button-mashing, screen-filling task of taking down someone like King Barnabas, or stopping Hugo Kupka from flattening any more hideouts. Final Fantasy XVI side quests are where the game's true character lies, as is its message that being invested in your fellow human pays off in ways we can barely put into words. Game design-wise, side quests start to give hugely tangible rewards, like recovering your Chocobo Ambrosia to travel around the land faster, increasing potion capacity, or opening up the most powerful weapons in the game for crafting. From Hour 5 to 50, Final Fantasy XVI side quests massively change, and need to be viewed holistically, relying on your capacity as a player to care for the person next to you. No game has ever put side quests so front and center of the entire experience before, putting so much money, so much production and R&D into just making sure that these come together across a gargantuan runtime. All of this is set against the backdrop of a world rotting from the inside out, here called The Blight, we're revisiting a thematic most prevalent in the intro of Final Fantasy VII. Whilst many Final Fantasies have strong environmentalist themes, another example being Final Fantasy VI with its natural espers being abused by Gestahl and Kefka, Final Fantasy VII embraced a full eco-terrorist framing for its intro, seeing Cloud, Barret and the gang full-on explode a reactor that's mining the Earth's life force to power part of the city of Midgar. Final Fantasy XVI embodies this for the bulk of the game. Here we swap Shinra for Ultima and reactors for Mother Crystals, the latter a stand-in for fracking, oil drilling, or whatever Earth resource mining practice you can think of. Ralph Ineson's Cid realizes the reliance on Mother Crystals for the wealthy to live better lives, or just for everyday people to use smaller fragments of crystals to get by, is precisely what's causing the Blight, still steering us into oblivion while no one ever really addresses it. The parallel to how important looking after our own animals, plants, and ecosystems is, versus how little that's ever a mainstay of any conversation, is obvious. Miraculously, Clive and his crew do actually succeed in breaking these constructs altogether, shattering the Mother Crystals and plunging the world into darkness, with Final Fantasy XVI not shying away from the twins falling apart in the process. As populaces are displaced and territory is still vied for by the empires of the land at the expense of their respective people, it's here where Final Fantasy XVI posits another question, one of moving away from nature or natural processes in our daily lives. The close of the game, post-magic wiped from the world, humbly shows a couple of children playing in their back garden, having lit a fire using natural methods. Ironically, the child longs for a faster method and wishes he had magical powers like the tales of old that you've just played through. However, the point is clear. Is there actually a greater good to mining the Earth itself? What function do territorial disputes actually have if the territory itself is crumbling? This is the game's core environmentalist humanist message. There is only one Earth, regardless of what we do on it. Final Fantasy XVI lays its more philosophical human take on that subject matter bare, only reinforcing it as the story plays out. As that roughly 35 to 50 hour runtime goes, you'll realize how much this game's version of a Final Fantasy party and the level of care that goes alongside each character in past installments is the entirety of the NPCs at your hideaway, and those you meet along the way. Everyone from fellow soldier Wade, who helps you defeat the tutorial boss, to Blackthorn the blacksmith providing weapons and armor for the whole game, gets a full character arc. We find out about Karen's history as a reformed criminal. Blackthorn overcomes outdated masculine tropes to admit weakness and grow stronger. Otto learns to lead the hideaway itself in Cid's stead when you're not around. Jill casts off the burden of being a dominant to help Clive save the world. Gav becomes a foster father. Quinton uses his skill set as Longview's trusted merchant to become a diplomat. And the bearers of Martha's Rest set out to start their own village, all from actions you choose to take. As an extension of making you believe in this world of character wills and consequences, Prince Dion goes from the Holy Empire's battlefield and throne room to the bedside of a young medicine seller in the later ruins of Sanbreque, fundamentally aided by the people he was protecting on high to come back stronger and avenge his father against Ultima. Again, all of this is to reinforce the point of togetherness, of caring and trying to better those around you. In Clive's case, because he's the one born with far more strength than his sibling Joshua, providing a rock-solid motivator to look out for those in need. None of the back half of the game remotely works or is even open to you if you haven't put the time into these quests from the beginning. Very few paths are forever locked off, but you simply won't get what Final Fantasy XVI is going for if you don't embody Cid and Clive's nature of caring for people as a player. On to Ultima, and for as overdone as the talk to God trope is in fiction, here writer Kazutoyo Maehiro gives us an embodiment of division, hatred, and of upper classes discarding those below them, a being that represents throwing bodies at a problem, casting aside the literal human cost. Somewhat simplistic? Sure, but division between classes, races, and various other human groups is something we see daily, illuminating Final Fantasy XVI's intention to make these points as blindingly obvious as possible. Here is also where we get another wrinkle to the philosophy of the game's message, provided you did finish all of Vivian Ninetales and Hippocrates side quests. The revelation that the magic-using bearers of old had churches across the land, and were themselves lording over those below, misusing their own power as humans forever seem to do. The Fallen, as we know them across the game, are in fact those original human bearers, a people who got carried away on the discovery of what the Ether granted them, making all the same mistakes you see the Empires and Ultima make in the game. Wiped out by Ultima after taking to the skies, it's why bearers are hated so much in the world of Valisthea. But overall, this serves as a reminder that Final Fantasy XVI is not saying human free will is perfect, only that it's preferable to servitude in any outright form. Clive spells this out to Ultima at the close of the game, that humans are imperfect creatures, but we have to be allowed to fail together on our own terms than subscribe to any wider doctrine. Final Fantasy XVI is the game of our time, a title that goes out of its way to paint a world full of hardship, inconvenience, and strife, but that fundamentally requires a level of investment on behalf of the player to pay it off through Clive. Ben Starr's exemplary performance as Clive champions why the connections forged between free-willing human beings for a greater good are stronger than any short-term easy-gain division. Final Fantasy XVI spells this out across its vast detailed NPCs, optional storylines, and optional human struggles that you can help make better. Yes, there are aspects here that Final Fantasy has been doing to various degrees for over 30 years, but no entry in the saga has laid all of it out with so much genuine passion. Finding positivity in the stumbles of life, sharing those struggles, and saying that communal betterment or well-wishing shouldn't feel stupid or outdated is a message that I personally love. Come the fight against Ultima, when all of Clive's closest friends and family are cheering him on with every last hit, it crystallizes the notion that we simply are better together. At least, that's what I got from 100%ing Final Fantasy XVI. It's easily my game of the year by a considerable distance, and I've not even mentioned that Bahamut fight, the bit where Ifrit slices Titan's crystal in two, or Clive and Jill going for one last frolic amongst the flowers before the end of the world. Tell me your thoughts on the game down in the comments. I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com. Thank you all for listening, and I genuinely wish you the best.